Welcome to the Adventure Travel Show podcast. I'm your host, Kit Parks, and today we're going to be doing something really fun. We're going to go bikepacking. So what is bikepacking? Think of it like backpacking, except for using your bike. So because of this, you're able to see probably 3 times the landscape and the destination that you would versus if you're traveling on foot. Of course, you can't get in all the nooks and crannies that you can go by foot, but you will be able to cover a lot more ground. Bikepacking can be as short as a nice weekend jaunt, or you can go all the way across the country. In fact, there are 6 main U.S. cross-country tours. We'll be talking about those a little bit later. There are rails to trails. There's national forest paths. There are trails all over Europe and Asia. So there's a lot of exciting adventures that you can go on. And so today, let's dig a little bit deeper into what is bikepacking and how you should go about doing it and planning it. So let's get started. First of all, what is bikepacking and why should we even care? When you think about it, I love to backpack and all that, and I'm a big hiker. However, there's only a certain amount of ground that you can cover when you're traveling by foot. So if you travel by bike in a similar manner as if you were backpacking, but with the mobility of the wheels, you can actually go like 3 times further. So in your limited vacation time, you can cover a lot more ground. Well, today we're going to be talking mostly about bikepacking when you're carrying all of your gear. We'll also talk a little bit later about if you would like to do the long distance biking, but you don't want to carry your gear, because there's options for that as well. So what exactly is bikepacking? Think of it, like I said, as bike touring, but with the backpacking instead. The bike you use will be determined by what kind of pavement you're going to be going on, dirt, gravel, or regular pavement. And depending on whether or not you're bringing your gear is whether it's bike touring or bike packing. So, in essence, bike packing can be bike touring. Bike touring may or may not be backpacking. It all depends on how you're securing your gear. Are you bringing the gear or is somebody bringing it for you? And I learned in doing my research, because I won't be doing my first bikepacking tour until later this year, but I wanted to get this episode out and I wanted to research it for myself as well as for you, is I was thinking panniers. When I see a lot of people bikepacking, they usually have the panniers, those little like saddlebags that go across the bike. But I found there's a lot of detriments to using the panniers. So we'll be talking a little bit later about the different gear that you do bring and the pros and cons of both. But I flipped my opinion, and I now would actually pack and wrap the stuff around the frame myself versus the panniers. So when you're backpacking, you're trying to balance the weight on your back. In bike packing, in contrast, you're trying to balance it on the bike. You may or may not have a small backpack on your back. I think for me, from what I'm looking at, I would like to have at least a day pack so that if I go into town and all that, I could put my most valuable things in the pack so I don't have to worry so much about them getting stolen. So typically on your pack, you're going to have some kind of a day pack that you'll put your light and bulky gear that might be sensitive to vibration, so that'll go on your back. A dry bag with some heavier items you'll put on the rear bag. Another dry bag or handlebar bag that you'll attach to your handlebar. That might include your tent, your sleeping pad, and clothes, and stuff that you might want quick access to, like your camera. If you've got a lot of light, bulky items, you might want to use a large seat back as well. Panniers, like we talked about earlier, are basically saddlebags that carry your heavy gear, like your food and your water, your stove. They're usually used by road tours and not for mountain bike users. So you're going to have to pay attention, like I said, to the surface that you're going to be biking on to help you determine what is the best option for you and for this particular trip that you're going on. Generally, you're just securing as tight as you can all of your gear to your frame. And remember I said I was not as big of a fan of the panniers as I thought of. There's a couple different drawbacks to them. Because they're bouncing around a lot, they increase the chances of mechanical failures. And something you might not think about, they're noisy. You may see some people hauling a bike trailer along a road. And if you have a lot of heavy gear, that is a consideration. But the blogs I've been reading, most end up ditching it. They decide it's just not worth it. Just pare down your stuff. One gal I met, she just wore the same thing every day when she had an outfit for public for when she finished the day that she would change into. And then she had her bike gear. As soon as she got to her hostel or hotel or whatever, she would rinse it out, wash it so it was dry, and hopefully dry, but sometimes not, ready to go the next day. So it's all about decreasing that weight. And like the same trade-off with backpacking, the more you spend, the lighter your gear. And that's just going to be a fact of life. In addition to your gear, you're going to want to have water bottle cages attached to your bike so you'll have plenty of access to water. And me, I like the bladder as well. On the website, I'm going to put more detailed information than you need to digest in just listening it of how to exactly pack. And particularly if you're doing the bags versus the panniers, you want to practice many times pack before you ever head out on your adventure, because it's critically important how you pack it, both for weight and to make sure it all fits. Because as you know, sometimes you pack better than others, and you want this down as a system, particularly if the weather's inclement. You want to be able to do it quickly and properly without messing around too much with it. You get a little bit more leeway with the pannier, but again, there are drawbacks, the noise and the mechanical failure options. Sometimes they'll break away. It just, for me, I think I'm leaning towards just doing the bags. And frankly, both strategies cost about the same. So again, a critical factor is what surface are you going to be riding on? That will dictate bag or panniers. The panniers you generally can't do on the off-road trails. They're sometimes too skinny. Thinking too about another benefit of using the bike bags strapped to your frame versus the panniers. The panniers can make tremendous wind resistance, which can make your pedaling more difficult. So I said the more research I was doing, even though it looks simpler and you can just throw the junk in the bags, I think you're better off to get the bags and strap them securely to your bike. And they do have, depending on the frame of your bike, different size bags that will fit between the frames. So you'll just have to do some shopping based on your bike, the surfaces that you're going on, and the trip that you're trying to take, and how long you plan on going. Are you going for a weekend? Or are you going out for a month or 2 months? There's some fantastic trails we're going to be talking about too. In fact, let's talk about them next, so you get your appetite whet for places that you can go. In the United States, where I am based, lots of people like to do cross-country tours, and there's 6 main tours that people take of varying degrees of difficulty. We also have a national rails to trails system. In fact, there are over 2,200 open rails and trails, over almost 25,000 miles of rails to trails. And what this is former rail beds, which generally have a very low grade of less than 5%. So you're either just coasting downhill or very gently going uphill, generally in beautiful areas like one on the Virginia Creeper Trail outside of Damascus, Virginia. They're just stunning, a lot of them. And they're generally very nice, easy trails. You're away from the traffic, you're out in nature, and it makes for a really pleasant bike ride. States, too, are getting into the act, and I'll be putting a link in the show notes, not just to the rails to trails, the national trails, but also the states are becoming more and more interested as bikepacking becomes a bigger tourist drive of creating networks of trails across their state and through some of the highlights and features of the different states. So it's becoming a bigger and bigger tourist attraction across the country. Let's talk a little bit about those 6 national trails. The first and the most classic one is the Trans-America Bike Ride. It's over 4,600 miles, and it starts in Astoria, Oregon, and ends in Yorktown, Virginia. You're going by the Pacific Ocean, you're climbing the Sierras, you're going through both Yellowstone and Grand Teton National Parks, and then you wind your way through the heartland, over to the Mississippi River, go through the Appalachian Mountains, a little bit of the Blue Ridge Parkway, and end in the Tidewater area of Virginia on the shores of the Atlantic. It's going to take you a couple of months to do that for sure. The second popular one is the Southern Tier bike route. If you have limited time, this is your shortest ocean-to-ocean connection, although it still is about 3,000 miles. You begin in beautiful St. Augustine, Florida. You're going to be hugging the Gulf Coast for a while, go through Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana. You're doing a little out and back spur into New Orleans, and then you leave the sea behind, and then you go through Texas with a nice stop in Austin. Then you're going across the rugged, dry Texas plains out west. You're going to be gracing the Mexican border in El Paso, and then going through the gorgeous desert of New Mexico and Arizona, and finally you end up in the Pacific Ocean in California. But one consideration, taking the southern route, you got to be really careful about when you do it, because if you go, you can't go in the summertime. It's going to be over 100 degrees in certain parts of it. So you've got to kind of time it so that you're away from the heat of summer, but you're also not getting the high winds and the icy temperatures of winter. So looking at the shoulder seasons of early spring and fall is going to be the best time to take this route. The third major USA trail is the East Coast Greenway. This isn't a cross country. This is a 3,000-mile route that is connecting rails or trails to multi-use pavement across 15 states up and down the eastern seaboard. Right now, only about a third of it is completed, but the parts that are not are on quiet paved roads. So it's still a nice route while we're waiting for the whole trail system to be finished. The goal is to tie the Canadian border just north of Augusta, Maine, all the way down to Key West, Florida. I'm going to have maps of all these trails on the website at theadventuretravelshow.podcast.com. If you're worried about climbing mountains, the East Coast Greenway Trail may be the best because you're basically going along the coast, so you're not really hitting a lot of mountains. It has the least elevation gain of all the 6 that I'm going to be talking about. If you're trying to chase the weather, go south to north and chase spring, get the beautiful spring weather going all the way down. Or if you'd rather watch the fall colors, start north and head south. The fourth route that I'd like to talk about is the Northern Tier Bike Route. This takes you along the Great Lakes. You're going through the backwoods of Wisconsin and Minnesota, going up and over the Rockies in Idaho and Montana. It's a long one, over 4,200 miles. You're connecting Anacortes, Washington with Bar Harbor in Maine. And since you're going to briefly be crossing the Canadian border in Alberta, make sure you bring your passport. And since I'm recording this during COVID, you will not be allowed to go into Canada. So keep that in mind. Hopefully we will be in a post-COVID area soon, so bring your passport just in case. You will also enjoy riding along the lakes in Ohio and New York. There's going to be a bit of a climb when you're on the western side of the route. Your highest pass is going to be over 5,500 foot elevation, but if you want to see big sky country without climbing a big pass every day, this is a great route. The best time of year to do this is in early summer. However, you got to watch out for the bugs. You're going to be dealing with gnats and mosquitoes, and in some of the grassy areas, watch out for the ticks. Of course, weather is always going to be an issue, especially with changing weather in the plains of Iowa and Illinois. You're going to be circumventing most of the major metropolitan areas like Chicago and Des Moines, and taking some quieter roads in those regions. Complementing the East Coast route is the Western Coast. Let's go to the Pacific Coast Bike Route. If you've ever taken a drive up and down the Pacific Coast, the views are outstanding. It's a little bit shorter at just under 1,900 miles, so a lot of people are able to pull this off in about just under 2 months. You're going to start in Vancouver, Canada, and then head down to Imperial Beach, California. You're going to be going through temperate rainforest, the redwood forest, going down Highway 101 and Highway 1. However, the drawback is this is such a popular vehicle route, you're going to have to ride much more defensively, and you're not going to have a lot of restful back roads to choose from. But the trade-off is the incomparable vistas of this ride. You also will get a chance to ride through Olympic National Park. The best time, because it's such a popular route and such a busy route, is during the off-season. The best time would be the fall, because you're likely to have the best dry weather up in that Pacific Northwest area. If you are really hardcore and a serious biker, you can consider doing the Great Divide Trail. This 3,000-mile trail weaves back and forth across the Continental Divide, and it has some serious elevation gains, sometimes 10,000 foot in a day. Over the course of the whole trail, you are going to be getting 200,000 feet of elevation gain. So this is not for the faint of heart. It's only for people that really know what they're doing and are experienced in riding in the mountains. And also, this is not paved. You're going to be on gravel and dirt, so you need a wide tire for this trail for sure. You're going to be going from Antelope Wells, New Mexico, all the way to Jasper in Alberta, Canada. It's also has many, many seriously remote areas, so you're going to have to plan accordingly. Some of these national forests and BLM lands that you go through are in the middle of absolutely nowhere, and you will truly understand what nowhere means when you do the Great Divide Trail. So those are the 6 great trails. But again, the Rails to Trails, if you don't want to do something so hardcore, consider doing one of the Rails to Trails. There are over 2,200 rail to trail paths in the United States, almost 25,000 miles of trail. And they've got almost another 1,000 projects that they're working on for another 9,000 miles. So where do you stay when you do one of these trails? Oftentimes you're going to be camping, so most times you're going to be needing to pack your tent, your sleeping bag, and a pad and all that gear. And on the website that accompanies today's podcast, rather than going point by point all the different stuff that you need to pack, I do have that outlined for you. And so that's on the website. And also if you get the monthly newsletter, it'll be included with that as well. So in addition to camping, sometimes, of course, you'll be in town and you can take advantage of hostels if they're available. In Europe, they're widely available. In the U.S., not so much, but there might be inns or bed and breakfasts. But another great thing you can consider doing is using an organization called Warm Showers. This is a global network of long-distance bikers. It's a community that offers their backyard, sometimes even a bed in their house, and often a warm shower, and thus that's how it gets its name. Sometimes they'll even offer you a meal. It doesn't cost you anything except for a nominal fee to join it, and it is hoped that if you take advantage of the kindness and hospitality of other fellow bikers, that you will extend the same when the opportunity presents itself to you. They have over 185,000 users across the globe. It really is a terrific organization. I'm also going to put some links on the website to other resources, 2 of my favorite bike tours. If, let's say, you don't want to plan your own trip yourself, if you're interested in doing something in Europe, I would recommend biketours.com, one of my affiliates. And if you're interested in Asia, India, Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, any of those places, then then please consider my other affiliate, theartofbicycletrips.com. And in both cases, please let them know that Kit at Active Travel Adventures sent you. I do earn a small commission at no additional cost to you, and it helps keep this program going. So I'd appreciate that. So again, on the website, we're going to look at what the actual gear. We talked a little bit about the difference between panniers and packs. I'm leaning more towards the packs for my own gear. It's more versatile. You can't overpack because you simply don't have enough room. And weight, just like in backpacking, is everything when it comes to bike packing. The less weight, the more comfortable you're going to be, and the less tired you're going to be. And everything, you just pare down, just to the bare necessities, with the exception of you always need to have your emergency kit. And in this case, that also includes a basic tire repair kit, as well as your navigational supplies, a map and a compass, etc. Those always go. Even if you don't use them every day, you do want to have those on site for you. And like in backpacking, the more money you're willing to cough up, the lighter weight gear you can get for the performance gear. You get titanium instead of aluminum, instead of steel. So the more money you spend on your gear, the more, it used to be like $100 per pound. It's probably a little bit more than that now, but the more you're willing to put forth, the lighter weight gear and the higher performance gear that you can get. But don't forget, you can always buy used. There's gear junkies out there that every year has to get the latest and greatest. Last year's stuff is probably perfectly serviceable. So don't forget to check out some of the online resources for people that are looking to offload their gear, usually for a pretty good price. And everything goes on sale at least once a year too, so you can keep an eye out for the sales. I do have the fantasy myself of doing a cross-country bike trip. The ones that appeal to me most are the East Coast. I've driven the West Coast. I think the traffic would concern me, that I'd be too afraid to be looking if I've got vehicles competing on the roadside with me. So the East Coast Trail appeals to me, and the Southern route. I don't think I'd ever get hardcore enough to be able to do the Continental Divide one. And there's still some rugged parts on that northern route up by the Great Lakes and all that, and over when you get across the Rockies. So I think for me, the East Coast and the Southern route are something I could put on my bucket list that I'd like to try. And even if I don't do the long distance one, I would like to do at least like a week or two jaunt just to see what it's like. I have a bike and boat trip planned for this fall. Croatia was actually supposed to be for 2020, but we know what happened there. So that's scheduled, and I will have The mountains, however, I did book a e-bike, so I will have a little bit extra support, but that will be a challenging 2-week bike ride that I'm excited about, but I'll stay at my same boat cabin each night, and I'm looking forward to that. I did cover on the Active Travel Adventures a bike boat trip along the Danube, and that's a great starter bike trip because you are going along the Danube, which is going downhill, so you're at about a 2% grade the whole thing. The trail starts in Passau and ends up in Vienna in Austria. You can take it all the way to Budapest if you want. So I'll put a link to that in the show notes. That is a beautiful, easy bike route. All you have to do is bring your day pack. They can move your luggage for you. You can sleep on the boat if you do the boat route, or they can book you in an inn in each of the cute little towns along the way. So there's lots of different ways that you can go bike packing, and you can make it as hardcore or as luxe as you want, depending on what you want to do. Again, there's lots of links in the show notes, which you'll find if you'll scroll down on the podcast right now, if you're listening on your phone, or just go to adventuretravelshowpodcast.com and just type in bikepacking in the search bar, and it'll pop right up for you. I do have a little bit of news too before we sign off today, and that is a couple years ago when I started this podcast. Let me back up a little bit further. About 3.5 years ago, I started the Active Travel Adventures podcast because I wanted to inspire and empower you and me to lead a bigger life through adventure travel. It has meant so much to me when I see how the adventures themselves are cool, but it also builds my self-esteem and makes me feel good about myself when I go on these adventures that are challenging, and then I do them. I train for them, and then I do them. And I feel really good about myself, as well as I think it's a wonderful way to explore the world and to meet some really cool people. But I didn't have all the skills necessarily when I started, and I figured there's others like me, and this whole thing has been, if I'm like this, others might be like this, so that's why I do it. So I started this show, the Adventure Travel Show podcast, where I outlined all the different skills and the tools that you needed in order to go on these adventures. And when I decided to do this, I wrote down a list of all the different topics I could think of that people would need to know how to do. And this bikepacking one concludes the end of that list. So unless I think of new topics or you suggest new topics, this is a closed-looped show. This is the end of the show, although I imagine periodically I'll think of a new topic. But I basically covered all the different components and things that you need to know in order to go on an adventure travel tour. So I encourage you to write me if I've missed something important at kit@activetraveladventures.com. Otherwise, this is at least for the immediate future, the last show. And if you haven't listened to all of them, I encourage you to download the whole catalog so you get a chance to listen to them at your leisure. Go back and pick up the ones that you missed. I think there's a lot of great information out there. Even if I'm not an expert on a topic, I do a lot of homework and a lot of research from the experts and try to compile that in an easy-to-digest format so that you can get out there and do it. And, of course, I do have a cheat sheet to go with all the different episodes for this show, as well as the travel planners for the Active Travel Adventures podcast. So with that, I encourage you, if you have not done so already, to subscribe to both podcasts so when the new episodes come out, they'll automatically appear in your feed and you won't miss anything. And with that, I thank you so much for listening to the Adventure Travel Show podcast. I've enjoyed putting it on. I don't know if this is the last episode forever or not, but it will be the last episode for the immediate future. And again, I thank you for listening. Please share this with your friends and let me know if these episodes have helped you at all or if they've inspired you to go somewhere. That's how I get my jollies, and that's my reward for putting on the show. Thanks again. Until next time, this is Kit Parks. Adventure on.